These are the 5 real legal strategies people use to fund retirement at age 55, a full decade before Medicare kicks in and 12 years before Social Security's full retirement age. If you are somewhere between 45 and 65 right now, this is the math you need to understand, because the 2026 eBury Retirement Confidence Survey found that 46% of retirees ended up leaving the workforce earlier than planned, and usually not by choice. Whether early retirement is your personal goal or something life ends up forcing on you, here is exactly how the funding works. The core problem nobody warns you about comes down to 2 hard age gates built into the U.S. retirement system. The first one is 59 and a half. The age your IRA and 401k become penalty-free under IRC Section 72T, and pulling money out before that usually triggers a 10% additional tax on top of regular income tax. Gate number 2 arrives at 65, which is when Medicare starts, meaning anyone who retires at 55 has a 10-year healthcare gap to fund on their own. Social Security adds a third wrinkle, because the earliest you can claim is 62, and claiming that early locks in roughly a 30% permanent cut compared to your full retirement age of 67. That is the gauntlet. And here is how people actually get through it. Strategy 1 is the rule of 55, which is the cleanest legal workaround sitting inside the tax code. Penalty-free withdrawals from a 401k or 403b become available the year you turn 55, but only from the employer you separated from during or after that year. Michael Rusinak, Vice President of Fidelity Financial Solutions, put it directly when he said, rollover EIRAs from 401ks are not included in this rule, and withdrawals could incur a penalty. Translation: if you roll your 401k into an IRA the day you retire, you just disqualified yourself from the entire benefit. Public safety workers, meaning police, firefighters, federal law enforcement, and air traffic controllers, get an even better version of this rule that kicks in at age 50. 2 things deserve your attention here. Withdrawals are penalty-free, but still taxed as ordinary income, and many plans refuse to allow partial withdrawals after you separate, which means you could be forced into a single lump sum distribution that wrecks your tax bill. Before pulling this lever, call your plan administrator and confirm the rules in writing. Strategy 2 is the 72T SEPP, short for substantially equal periodic payments. And this one exists for people who already have money sitting in an IRA or who don't qualify for the rule of 55. Under IRC Section 72T, the IRS allows you to set up a series of substantially equal periodic payments from your retirement account and bypass the 10% penalty entirely, using one of 3 approved calculation methods: the required minimum distribution method, the fixed amortization method, or the fixed annuitization method. The catch is brutal, because once you start, you have to continue those payments for the greater of 5 years, or until you turn 59 and a half. Break the schedule by taking too much, taking too little, or stopping early, and the IRS retroactively applies the 10% penalty to every distribution you've already taken, plus interest on top. SEPP genuinely works, but you have to treat it like a binding contract with the IRS, because improvisation is what destroys people who try this strategy. Strategy 3 is the Roth Conversion Ladder, which is basically the strategy the FIRE community built modern early retirement on. The mechanics involve slowly converting money from a traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA, one chunk at a time, paying ordinary income tax on each conversion in the year you do it. Here is the key piece, because after a 5-year waiting period, the converted principal can come out tax-free and penalty-free even if you haven't hit 59.5 yet. Every single conversion starts its own separate 5-year clock. So anyone aiming to retire at 55 needs to begin converting at 50 to create a rolling staircase of accessible money every year afterward. The trade-off is that you need a bridge of roughly 5 years of expenses parked somewhere accessible, like a taxable brokerage account, just to carry you through that initial waiting period. Strategy 4 is the taxable brokerage account paired with the 4% rule, and this is the most flexible bucket because it carries 0 age restrictions, no penalties, no waiting periods, no IRS payment schedule. You simply sell when you want to sell. Long-term capital gains on assets held over a year get taxed at 0%, 15%, or 20% depending on your income. And here is the part most people completely miss. The 0% long-term capital gains bracket in 2025 stretches up to $48,350 of taxable income for single filers and $96,700 for married filing jointly, meaning an early retiree with no W-2 income can pull out a meaningful chunk of gains, completely tax-free. This is also the account where the 4% rule lives. Originally published by William Bengen in the October 1994 issue of the Journal of Financial Planning under the title Determining Withdrawal Rates Using Historical Data, Bengen's research demonstrated that a 4% initial withdrawal rate, adjusted for inflation each year, survived every historical 30-year stretch using a 50/50th stock and bond portfolio. And the 1998 Trinity Street UDI from Cooley, Hubbard, and Walls confirmed those findings. That is the actual origin of FIRE math, because your FIRE number, being 25 times your annual expenses, is just the inverse of 4%. One important update from Bengen himself, who said in a public Reddit AMA, the 4% rule is actually the 4.5% rule. I modified it some years ago on the basis of new research. Retiring at 55 changes the picture though, because you are not planning for 30 years anymore. You are planning for 35 or 40, which is why many planners now suggest 3% to 3.5% as the safer starting rate for that longer horizon. Strategy 5 is income-producing assets, the strategy that lets you bend the math in your favor. Rental, real estate, dividend stocks, part-time consulting work, anything that throws off cash flow without forcing you to sell down your portfolio counts here. Rental income, in particular, stays completely independent of the 4% rule because the rent doesn't care how old you are or what the S&P 500 did last quarter. The risks are real and worth respecting, including vacancies, repairs, difficult tenants, and concentration in a single local market. But for plenty of early retirees, this is the piece that fills the gap between almost enough and actually enough. This is also the backbone of what the community calls barista FIRE or coast FIRE, where part-time income, often chosen specifically for the health insurance benefits, covers your current expenses while your investments quietly keep compounding untouched in the background. Now here is the conversation nobody actually wants to have. And that conversation is healthcare. Fidelity S 2025 Retiree Healthcare Cost Estimate, which happens to be their 24th annual one, calculates that a 65-year-old retiring today may need $172,500 in after-tax savings just to cover healthcare during retirement. For a couple Fidelity institutional places, the figure around $345,000. And that number specifically excludes long-term care. Here is the part that hits early retirees the hardest, because all of those numbers start at age 65. And before 65, you are completely on your own. A full-price ACA plan for an unsubsidized 62-year-old can easily run over $1,000 a month, and the enhanced ATA premium tax credits that have been helping early retirees since 2021 are scheduled to expire at the end of 2025. Whether Congress decides to extend them will materially change the math for anyone trying to retire at 55 right now. So check the current rules before you commit to anything. Tying all of this together, the retirement at -55 playbook is actually one strategy at all. It is a stack. You unlock your tax deferred money early using either the rule of 55 or a 72T SEPP. You build a Roth Conversion Ladder to keep that money flowing tax-free across the decades ahead. You hold a taxable brokerage account as both your bridge and your flexible bucket, and you layer in rental income or part-time work to take pressure off the 4% rule. Then you plan in cold, hard numbers. For the 10-year healthcare gap between retirement and Medicare, retiring at 55 is difficult, but not because the strategies don't exist, because they clearly do, written directly into the tax code itself. The real difficulty is that 46% of retirees end up leaving work earlier than they planned regardless of what they wanted. The real question is whether you want to retire at 55. The real question is whether you'd actually be ready if you suddenly had to. If your honest answer right now is no, the best day to start fixing that was 10 years ago, and the second best day is today.